Waypoints. It's good to be together again. It's good to be with you to study Scripture, to look at these stories of Jesus, and to examine how God is speaking to us through the book of Mark. We've been looking at the book of Mark for several weeks now, and we're in Mark chapter 5, verses 18 through 20. And this is what it says. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. But Jesus said, "No, go home to your family and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he has been." Now, if you remember, this man who was demon-possessed was a man who was possessed by a legion of demons. And these demons tormented him, and he lived essentially in the cemetery. And Jesus cast the demons out into a herd of pigs, and then those pigs immediately plunged off of a cliff and killed themselves. And so now this man has been freed from his oppression, and he is so grateful and so thankful that he wants to go with Jesus. He wants to serve Jesus as Jesus travels around, and Jesus tells him to stay put, to stay where he's at, to go to his family, to go to the village and tell everybody what Jesus has done to him. And in the last part of these verses, it says, "So the man started off to visit the 10 towns of the region and began to proclaim the great things that Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed by what he had told them." So in his gratitude to Christ, he wanted to go with Christ. And I think that oftentimes as we're transformed by the gospel, when we're transformed by Jesus, we're excited and we want to go and just go. We want to go serve Jesus however we can. And we often think that following Jesus means that we leave, that we go someplace and follow Jesus. But this story tells us that following Jesus is sometimes about staying and being a witness where you are. This story reminds us that sometimes, for some people, really for most of us, following Jesus means staying. It means telling our family and our friends and our coworkers and our neighbors what Jesus has done for us. And Todd is going to share more about these verses this week. And Justin is going to wrap us up. And so now I just want to hand it off to Todd so we can learn more about what Jesus is teaching us in these verses.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for watching Waypoints Go. And we hope that it's making a difference in your spiritual journey. And if it is, would you think about partnering with us financially? See, Waypoints Go is a crowd-funded mission. It's a group of people who want to take the gospel and the truth of Jesus outside of the four walls of a church to take it on the go with us. And this content in which you're watching is only available by generous partners, people who come alongside and say, "I believe in this mission." So if this is making a difference for you, if you believe in the mission in which we are doing, then we just ask you to partner with us financially. You'll find a link below in the description on how to go ahead and do that.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you, Ryan, so much. Tonight, as Ryan began to talk to us, we're going to kind of finish up this 3-week journey that we have been on, dealing with the man known as Legion, the man who was possessed by so many demons, and the whole thing with the pigs and all that sort of stuff. We kind of want to wrap this up, and it's interesting, we divided this up into 3 weeks because we just thought that there were some important things that we wanted to make sure to get into here for all of us. And this last thing is that we find here in these last few verses is the man's response to what Jesus did and then Jesus's response to what the man asks. And it's super, super interesting. I think that we kind of expect for a man who is set free from his, demonic oppression, a man who is set free from the life that he was experiencing, all of the craziness and the separation and the shame and all that. Jesus comes along and he heals him by setting him free. And I think that our natural response is, well, of course, this man's going to want to follow Jesus, right? Of course, this man's going to want to say, hey, Jesus, can I follow you, and all this other stuff. And so when we see in verse 18, this man is like begging Jesus, please let me come, let me be your disciple, let me follow you, all that. That's expected. What's not expected necessarily is what Jesus says to the man. And let's just look at it again one more time. Jesus says this in verse 19. He says, no, you can't follow me. Go home to your family and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he has been. There are so many things that just strike me by this sentence. First of all, the thing that strikes me right away is like Jesus is like, no, you're good exactly where I have you. You don't need to stop everything that you're doing and simply follow me. You don't have to. This isn't like the disciples where he says, stop, give up your job, walk away from your fishing nets, walk away from your tax booth, walk away from the life that you were living, leave it all and follow me. In fact, Jesus gives him almost the opposite answer. It's like, no. I want to leave you exactly where you are so that you can tell people about me in your current life. And that's absolutely amazing to me, because I think sometimes when we become followers of Jesus, sometimes when Jesus does an amazing work in our life, the first thing we think we need to do is we need to like stop everything we're doing and just simply follow Jesus. It's like, okay, I need to go and do ministry. I need to go to seminary. I need to, dedicate my life inside the four walls of the church. And that's not Jesus's response to this man. He's like, no. You are living in this area. You're living in these relationships for a reason. And I want to leave you right there so that you can tell people about me. I don't want you to leave your world. I want you to leave your friends. I don't want to leave you to leave your town. I want you to stay right where you are because I've got you there for a reason. And I think it's important for us to know that Jesus kind of gives us three basic callings in life. The first calling, I think, is salvation, right? That Jesus calls us into a relationship with him, right? That he calls us to salvation. The second thing he does is he actually calls us to a vocation, what it is that we do for our job, what it is that we do for our living. And the third is, I believe that God calls us to a location, that God calls us to an area. He calls us to a town. He calls us to a city. And he says, this is where I want you to be. And both our vocation and our location are there so that we can use our salvation. That he's called us to faith so that we can use our job to tell people about him. He's called us to a city, to an area, to a place so that we can tell people about him. And so many times we have, and this is exactly why we're doing Waypoints Go. This is exactly why we've had this change in ministry. People are not going to church to try to find Jesus. What we need to do is we need to take Jesus outside the four walls of the church and tell people about him. We need to introduce them in our everyday life to Jesus. And that's exactly what he is telling this man. It's like, no. Stop. I do not want you to give up what you do. I do not want you to give up where you live. I want you to tell people about me exactly where you are. And that's just so important for us to embrace. Jesus has called you to the job that you have so that you can use that as a platform to tell people about him. Jesus has called you to your city, to your town, to your neighborhood, to your house, so that you could use that position to tell people about him. This man doesn't have to go and get more education. This man doesn't have to go get his degree in seminary. This man doesn't have to go to Bible study after Bible study after Bible study before he's ready to tell people about Jesus. Jesus is just like, boom, I want you to tell people about what I have done in your life. You don't have to go get a seminary degree. You don't have to go become a pastor. You don't have to, leave and follow me for 3 years before you're ready. This man knows nothing about Jesus except what Jesus has done in his life. Which kind of leads me to another point. So many times we feel like I don't have the education to tell people about Jesus. I don't know enough about the Bible to tell people about Jesus. And as well-intentioned as those excuses are, that's exactly what they are, they're excuses. Because this man doesn't have this. He's not even Jewish. For crying out loud, he doesn't know the Old Testament. He doesn't know the story. He doesn't know the whole Jewishness, right? He's a Gentile. Lives on the wrong side of the lake, right? All he knows is what Jesus did in his life. And so Jesus says, all you need to know is what I did in your life. All you need to do to tell other people is tell them what I did in your life. That's it. What I did in your life. That's all you have to tell people. And that is a great, great lesson for us. All we have to do is to tell people what Jesus did in our lives. And that's it. And I think this is just great for us to see how Jesus responds and the mission that this guy receives from Jesus. May that be exactly your mission as well. Justin?
Well, thanks, Todd. What an end to an amazing story. Jesus asked this man to stay behind. And he wanted to go, this individual who was set free, he wanted to go to be part of the miracles that Jesus was going to perform and continue to unleash on humanity. But Jesus told him that the best place for you is actually right here, is to stay behind with your family, with your local town. That was not at all what this man was expecting. This man had something else that he was considering. The best, he wanted to go and see Jesus and watch and be a part of that. But the best place, Jesus says, for this man to be is right here. Stay here. See, sometimes I think I have my role figured out, where I know exactly what I'm supposed to do, and then the moment when I think I got it down, God switches it up on me. He says, nah, I want something different. But even more, God has this plan that honestly is better than my plan. God knew this man was going to be better at telling his story in the region than the townspeople. Now remember, the townspeople are kind of biased. They are a little upset that Jesus did this miracle and ruined their livelihood. But so Jesus knows that this man is the best one to tell his story. Jesus knew something that the man didn't realize yet, and that's the calling. See, Jesus rescued this individual from, and then gives him a task, gave him a mission, gave him a purpose, gave him a calling. This man did not get a calling before he was rescued. Jesus gave this man a calling after salvation. Our callings come after salvation, meaning that our passions are usually born out of a tragedy. Have you ever noticed that? The person who's hooked on drugs for years and almost dies becomes an addiction counselor. They are set free from a hell only to turn around and serve people still trapped inside of that hell. The person who loses a child lives through the pain, becomes a soothing voice on the other end of a phone talking to a parent who just recently lost their child. There is a movement of adult film actors who have gotten out of the industry only to turn around and help other men and women establish a life outside of the adult movie business. The depths of pain bring people to humility, and it is honestly the best place to serve. Our deepest hurts become an invitation for us to serve others. That is not for the weak of heart. It's not. It's tough to be able to face your tragedy, and the healing that you experienced is a big ask from God. And I get that. But what's on the other side is unbelievable. Just on the other side of our pain and our tragedy is God's miracles, not just in our life, but in others. The story that you are too afraid of to tell is the one that you should tell. And honestly, don't worry about what other people think. It's not their story. It's your story. People want to know their tragedy is not wasted, and your experience with God through your tragedy is just the story another person needs to give them hope that their suffering has a possibility of not being wasted. So let's talk about that. What tragedy did God overcome in your life? That could be an impact on the people around you. Are you willing to tell it to others? Are you willing to offer hope out of the situation that caused you so much pain? Let's talk about that.